For centuries, humanity has looked to the stars in awe, as explorers, scientists, dreamers. But today, outer space is no longer just the realm of curiosity or science fiction. It is now a domain of power, security, and competition. The geopolitics of outer space has emerged as one of the most critical strategic frontiers of the 21st century. From communication satellites to hypersonic missile defense systems, from lunar bases to Mars missions, space is no longer just an off-world venture. It's a reflection of Earth-bound politics. Major powers like the United States, China, Russia, and India are rapidly expanding their space capabilities, often driven by military, economic, and strategic goals. Private companies such as SpaceX, Blue Origin, and others are revolutionizing access to space, while legal treaties crafted during the Cold War now struggle to address today's fast-changing realities. In this episode, we explore the geopolitics of outer space through 5 key lenses: foundational strategic competition, legal frameworks, technological disruption, and the twin forces of cooperation and conflict. As humanity enters a new space age, the stakes have never been higher, not just for nations, but for the future of global security, economy, and even our shared existence. The competition for space dominance today mirrors the intensity of Cold War rivalries. The US and Soviet Union once raced to the moon. Today, the US and China race to dominate low Earth orbit, the moon's surface, and deep space. Space is now a recognized domain of warfare, alongside land, sea, air, and cyber. A shift formally acknowledged by the establishment of the US Space Force in 2019. China's rise is particularly notable. The Chinese National Space Administration, CNSA, has launched the Tiangong Space Station, conducted successful lunar sample returns, and is planning crewed missions to the moon by 2030. These moves are both technological feats and geopolitical signals. Space dominance is being reframed as a symbol of global leadership. As in the 20th century, national prestige, military advantage, and ideological rivalry are driving state behavior. But this time, the race is multipolar, not just US versus China, but also involving India, Russia, Japan, and the European Union. Let's take a brief look. United States. Its policy emphasizes space superiority and resilience of critical infrastructure. NASA and the Department of Defense collaborate with companies like SpaceX, enhancing both civil and military objectives. The Artemis Accords also show US intent to shape international norms around lunar exploration and commercial mining. China. China's space strategy is outlined in white papers, emphasizing space power. It seeks technological self-reliance, lunar presence, and space-based surveillance. The Beidou satellite navigation system is China's alternative to GPS, enhancing its strategic independence. Russia. Despite economic challenges, Russia maintains a strong military space program. It focuses on anti-satellite weapons, ASAT, and orbital reconnaissance. It has tested co-orbital killer satellites and maintains a posture of deterrence through space. India. India's 2019 ASAT test, Mission Shakti, signaled its entry into the military space club. The Indian Space Research Organization, ESRO, is focusing on low-cost missions and lunar solar exploration, bolstering both economic and strategic visibility. Today's militaries depend heavily on satellite technology, reconnaissance. Satellites provide real-time intelligence, target tracking, and geospatial data. Missile tracking. Systems like the U.S. Space-Based Infrared System, SBIRS, detect missile launches. Navigation and communication. GPS and equivalents like GLONASS, Russia, BeiDou, China, and ANA-VC, India, are critical for military operations. Space-based weapons. While no weapons are yet confirmed in orbit, nations are developing capabilities like jamming, cyber attacks on satellites, and even hypothetical kinetic energy weapons, sometimes referred to as rods from God. Space is now a strategic high ground, critical not just for deterrence but for preemption, escalation control, and battlefield dominance. The Outer Space Treaty, OST, was a landmark, prohibiting national appropriation of celestial bodies and banning weapons of mass destruction in space, but it was crafted in a very different era, 1967. Today's challenges go beyond its scope. It doesn't ban conventional weapons in space. It doesn't regulate private actors. It lacks enforcement mechanisms. Thus, the OST is foundational but insufficient. Modern space activity has outpaced its provisions. Legal scholars propose new treaties or protocols addressing anti-satellite weapons, ASATs, space debris mitigation, commercial mining rights, dual-use technologies, militarization limits, and transparency measures. The risks are enormous. ASAT tests create thousands of pieces of debris, threatening all satellites. Arms races in space can destabilize deterrence balances. Ambiguity in intentions could trigger misunderstandings. A military satellite maneuver might look like a hostile act. International norms, such as transparency measures, codes of conduct, and no first placement policies, can reduce mistrust. The EU's proposed International Code of Conduct for Outer Space Activities and the UN's efforts on norms of responsible behavior are important, though not yet universally accepted. A feasible governance model would require binding agreements on weapons and debris, rules for commercial resource extraction, mechanisms for dispute resolution, transparency and information sharing. Challenges remain, especially due to mistrust among major powers. But precedents like the Antarctic Treaty suggest cooperative governance is possible under the right diplomatic conditions. Private firms are democratizing space access while disrupting traditional government-led models. SpaceX, for example, cuts launch costs with reusable rockets, Falcon 9. Operates Starlink, a massive low Earth orbit satellite network. Provides launch services to NASA, the DoD, and international clients. Blue Origin and others are pushing towards space tourism, lunar landers, and orbital habitats. Their impact is twofold. Strategic autonomy. Nations rely on private firms, which introduces new dimensions of state-business entanglement. Commercial diplomacy. Countries may align their policies with companies' capabilities, shifting the balance of power. Space resources, like helium-3 on the Moon, water ice, and rare earth minerals on asteroids are the next big prize. The U.S. Commercial Space Launch Competitiveness Act, 2015, and Artemis Accords grant companies rights to space resources, a move criticized by Russia and China as space colonialism. Resource nationalism. Conflicting claims over lunar zones, technological monopolies. There's a growing consensus that a multilateral framework is needed before a space gold rush escalates tensions. Cooperation is both promising and fragile. The International Space Station, ISS, a model of US-Russia cooperation, now nearing its end. The Artemis program, involving NASA, ESA, Japan, and others. ISRO-JAXA lunar missions, and ESA's Mars collaboration with Roscosmos. Divergent strategic goals, technology transfer restrictions, sanctions, and geopolitics, like US laws barring NASA from bilateral work with China. Collaboration thrives in science, but falters in defense-related domains. Both are possible, and both are already happening. Space offers a commons that no nation can claim, encouraging collaboration. But its strategic value for surveillance, deterrence, and prestige also breeds suspicion and rivalry. If major powers can craft mutual interests, like preventing debris proliferation or sharing deep space data, cooperation may prevail. If not, the weaponization of space could lead to destabilizing brinkmanship. Ultimately, the future of space geopolitics will be shaped by human choice between cooperation, competition, or confrontation. As we come to the end of this journey through the geopolitics of outer space, one thing becomes clear. Space is no longer the silent vacuum we once thought it was. It's becoming a crowded, contested, and consequential arena, with real implications for life here on Earth. We've seen how major powers, the United States, China, Russia, India, and others, are not simply racing to explore space, but to control strategic orbits, establish legal precedents, and protect their national interests far beyond the atmosphere. From military satellites and missile detection systems to commercial megaconstellations and asteroid mining, the line between science, security, and sovereignty is rapidly blurring. This is no longer just about space exploration. It's about who gets to define the future of space, and under what rules. The Cold War gave us the first taste of space rivalry, but today's competition is broader, more complex, and multipolar. Where once only two superpowers played the game, now both nation-states and private corporations hold major influence in orbit. And that influence comes with both risks and responsibilities. We also explored how the Outer Space Treaty of 1967, once a visionary step toward peaceful use, is now being stretched beyond its limits. It offers no clarity on private mining rights, no mechanisms for space traffic coordination, and no enforceable restrictions on non-nuclear weapons in space. If left unaddressed, this legal vacuum may become a trigger for real-world confrontation, be it from ASAT weapons, lunar land grabs, or the reckless creation of debris that threatens the entire orbital ecosystem. At the same time, we saw encouraging signs of hope and cooperation. The International Space Station, the Artemis Accords, and global scientific collaborations show us that space can also be a platform for diplomacy, for partnership, and for unity. After all, the challenges we face, climate change, asteroid threats, and the need for sustainable development, are not bound by borders, and neither is space. But the future will depend on our choices and our values. Will we treat space as a common good or as a new theater of conquest? Will we build shared frameworks for exploration and resource use, or descend into fragmented spheres of influence? We have the opportunity, and perhaps the obligation, to write new rules, create new alliances, and ensure that the space age remains a force for peace, progress, and shared destiny, not another chapter in global rivalry. Because in space, as in geopolitics, what happens above will increasingly shape what happens below. This has been Geopolitics in Outer Space, a look at the challenges, the players, and the choices that will define humanity's future beyond Earth. Thank you for joining us.